The subject of today's session is Dharma, Svadharma and Paradharma. There are many definitions of Dharma. If you want to compile huge collection of definitions, you can Google the word Dharma and you will find so many people coming up with the word and definitions of Dharma. But in fact, I am going to give you a definition of Dharma, which is what I believe is the perfect definition. Dharma means that which is the essence of your being, that on full expression leads to your extinction or annihilation. For example, the dharma of the sun is to give us sunlight. The dharma of the cloud is to give us rain. And ultimately, one day the sun will, having shone and given us light and heat for eons, will finally burn out. Similarly, the rain cloud, once it gives rain, it will dissipate. There will be no cloud. Similarly, if you take camphor, which is frequently used in our rituals and ceremonies and artis, the dharma of camphor is to burn. And when it burns, there is no camphor left. Yes, there is a fragrance that remains, but that camphor is gone. Similarly, with the incense stick or the agarbatti, when it is lit, it is consumed and nothing remains. So also, when a person performs his dharma, in the performance of his dharma, two things happen. One, he sustains and maintains creation in his own way. Of course, the sun will sustain and maintain creation in one way. The cloud will do it in another. And each individual who performs his dharma will perform his duty in his own way, in his own little piece of the puzzle that forms this creation. So what is dharma of the individual? The dharma of the individual is that dharma which, when performed, leads to moksha or mukti. It leads to the extinction of the individual. The performance of dharma, when performed in the right manner, ultimately leads to purification of that individual and union with God, with extinction of self. So therefore, we should be very careful to understand what dharma is, because it is through the performance of dharma that one attains moksha. You have to understand that the Bhagawad Geeta is not a pure moksha text. It's not centered around moksha. The Bhagavad Gita is centered around dharma. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham. Clearly says that whenever there is a decline in dharma and there's a rise in adharma, at that time do I descend on this earth. So, the performance of dharma is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And when one performs one's dharma in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God, then one attains perfection, which is spiritual perfection, is dissolution of the self and union with God. And this dissolution of the self and union with God results from the performance of Dharma as a sacrifice to please God. So, Bhagavad Gita is about Dharma, and Dharma is the process by which one attains moksha. There are, of course, other philosophies which are selfishly salvation centric, which are adharmic. And by adharmic, I mean they encourage and they cause people to abandon their duty towards their families, towards society, and to abandon their duties towards society and become renunciates, mendicants, anchorites, sannyasis, to become rishis, munis, who have abandoned the world, not doing their duties in society because they are selfishly concerned with their own salvation. This, of course, is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita clearly says, Sannyasastu mahabhao dukkham aptum yogatah yoga yukta munir brahma na chirena adi gacchati. That those who engage in the performance of renouncing the world, having renounced their duties, without having attained union with God, such people attain only sorrow. But yoga yukta munir brahma na chirena adi gacchati. But those who work in the world in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, engaging in their Svadharma, such people attain perfection. So it's important to understand that the purpose of work is purification. The Bhagavad Puran has a very beautiful verse on this. It says, Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthayopakalpate narthasya dharmaikantasya kamulabhaye hi smritah. Your dharma, your duties are a path to salvation. They are not for the primary purpose of creating wealth. And if you should accumulate wealth as a result of performing your dharma, do not use that wealth to degrade the self. So when you work in the world, when you perform your duties at your workplace, because work continues in your home, duties continue in your home, duties continue in society, duties continue in your interaction with people on your live. So those who perform their duties, those who perform their dharma, such people are fulfilling the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita when they are performing these duties in a spirit of sacrifice as a yajna. Yagnarthat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Those activities performed as dharma, as yajna, these yajnas that you perform, they free you from karma. All other activities which are not performed as a sacrifice means they are performed for yourself. They only bind you further to karma. So we perform work according to the Bhagavad Gita, regardless of the sense of purification one has attained. Even if you are a yogi, you are beholden, you are obliged, you are obligated to do your duty. That duty is to serve God. And not only is it your duty to serve God, but in serving God, it's your duty to purify the self. Kayena manasa buddhaya kevalair indriyarapi yogina karma kuruvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. Kayena, with the body, Manasa with the mind, Buddhaya with the intelligence. Kevala Indriyarapi, with all your limbs, your senses. Yogina karma kurvanti. Even the yogi works, but without attachment. Sangam tyaktata. For what purpose? He works for the sake of Atma Shuddhaye, for the purification of the self. Those who do not work cannot purify the self, and those who work for selfish reasons alone, they cannot purify the self. But one who performs his duties, his God-given duties in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God, such people are considered by Krishna to be the real yogi, the real sannyasi, not those who light no fire, who do no work. Anashritah karma phalam karya karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragne na chakriya. One who works without taking shelter of the fruits of his labor, he is the true yogi, he is the true sannyasi, not one who lights no fire and does no work. So this is the purpose of work. The purpose of work is to fulfill your dharma. And in the performance of your dharma, you will attain extinction. Instead of being born again and again and again, life after life, because this physical body may become dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but the subtle body keeps taking rebirth. Vasansha jirnane yatha vihaya navani grinati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnanya anyani saumyati navani dehi. Just as you throw off you cast off your worn out clothes and you wear new clothes or fresh clothes, so also you cast off your worn out body, no longer useful for fulfilling your desires, and you put on a new set of clothes or a new physical body. Indeed, the purpose of work is to work in a manner so as to remember God and forget self. And when one remembers God and forgets self, through the process of spiritual self-realization, one attains freedom from rebirth. So this is the purpose of Dharma. There are actually, they say, 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. So, Dharma and Moksha are the ones where your effort is required, which is the real Purusharth. But Kama and Artha, they come by your prarabdha. They come by your destiny. Your wealth and your enjoyments in this world come by your destiny, the result of previous birth. But your dharma is purushartha, it is the effort that you make in this life. And if your dharma is performed appropriately in the right spirit, in a spirit of sacrifice, then one attains perfection. So what is that dharma? Which is your dharma? What is the meaning of Svadharma? What is Paradharma? Svadharma means that dharma which is unique to you. That Svadharma may not be unique to anyone else. It may not even be equal. It may even be unique from your own siblings. Your Swadharma may be different from that of your brother or your sister. Indeed, your Swadharma is the result of the unique combination of your Prakriti and your soul. Your Prakriti is unique, and it is unique because it is the result of all the accumulation of the things that you have done in multiple previous lives. And this is part of your Prakriti. There is an illusion in the minds of men, often enshrined in the constitution of many countries, that all men are created equal. But when we look around in the world, we see that indeed no one is created equal. Some are taller, some are shorter, some are slimmer, some are fatter, some are fitter, some are unfit physically. There are those who are mentally solid and stable. There are those who are mentally unstable and emotionally labile. You have people who are wealthier and people who are in poverty. So you have people who are more intelligent and you have people who are less intelligent. So how can you say that people are equal, all people are equal, all men are equal, all women are equal? Neither are all people equal, but every individual is different from the next. And that difference comes not from the soul. In fact, this understanding of equality arises from the spiritual vision, which says that each individual soul is identical. Your soul is no different from my soul or the soul of another. So this soul is common, it is unique. It is unique in that it is identical to the other souls. But the rest of you, your Prakriti, is completely different from the Prakriti of the person sitting right next to you even now. So this Prakriti is different, but the soul is identical. So if you have the vision, a spiritual vision, you will see all people as equal. But if you have material vision, you will see all people as most definitely unequal. So you have to understand that this Prakriti that each of us possesses is part of our dual nature. The soul forms part of our Prakriti, forms part of our inner self, and our Prakriti forms the other part of our inner self. So we are formed of two. One is spirit and the other is Prakriti. And this combination of spirit and Prakriti, the spirit is constant and the same and among all living beings, and the Prakriti is different, it is individualistic. So this Prakriti is designed for different things. For example, let us say there is a group of quadruplets who joins the armed forces. And of these quadruplets who joins the armed forces, one is given a tank with which to fight the enemy. One is given a tractor with which to dig the fields, to till the fields. The third may be given a motorcycle to go from one place to another. And yet another may be given a submarine. They're all quadruplets, so they're all identical quadruplets. But each of them is situated in a different vehicle. So also all of us, we are the same because we are having the same individual soul, identical individual soul. But the Prakriti that we possess, each of us possesses a Prakriti which is different and which is a result of the activities we have performed in the previous life and the body which has been given to body, mind, and intelligence given to us by God. So we have actually got two Svadharmas. One Svadharma is the Svadharma of the soul, which is to serve God. The other Svadharma is the Svadharma of Prakriti. And the Svadharma of Prakriti is to act true to its own nature. If you do not act true to your own nature, and you do not act in a spirit of service to please God, both ways, you meet with suffering and you meet with unhappiness within this world. But when you perform your duties in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to please God, then what happens? The result of this is that you attain perfection. In the Bhagawad Geeta 18.45, Krishna says very clearly to Arjuna, Swe swe karmanya abhiratah samsiddhim labate naraha swakarma niratah siddhim yatha vindati tachrinu. By performing your God-given duties, which come out of your inner nature of Prakriti, in a spirit of sacrifice to please God, one attains perfection. And he says, now listen, because I am going to explain to you how this happens. And he says in chapter 18, verse 46, Yataha pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana abhyarchaya siddhim vindati manavaha. By performing one's natural God-given duties, one worships the Supreme Lord, from whom all living beings have come into creation, and indeed who pervades this universe. By this performance of work as a sacrifice to please Him, each person attains perfection. So, yataha pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmano abhyarchaya siddhim vindati manavaha. So it's very important, Krishna says, that you should do your duties, even though your duty might be unpleasant. It happens in your life. Sometimes you have to perform activities or duties which you are obligated to perform. But you don't like doing them. But what can you do? You have to do them. And if you do them in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion, God is pleased. Krishna says in chapter 3, verse 34 of the Bhagavad Gita, Indriya yasyarthe raga dveshau vyavastitau tayor navasham agachet tau yasya paripantinau. Your senses naturally experience likes and dislikes, attachment and aversion to the objects in the world. Do not be influenced by them, because these senses are indeed your enemies if they come and prevent you from performing your God-given duties. So you have to perform some duties, and those duties are unpleasant. But your senses tell you, no, don't do it, it's such a pain. But in text, chapter 3, verse 35, Krishna explains, Shreyan Svadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Svanushtitat Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. We have this example of Arjuna. Arjuna is standing as a warrior on the battlefield, and he has, in fact, a duty to perform which is distinctly unpleasant. It's a duty which his senses are rebelling against, his mind is rebelling against. How can I kill the one who taught me how to wield the weapons? How can I kill my grandsire? How can I kill my cousins? And Krishna is explaining to him, although you may find that your senses and your mind rebel against the performance of your duties, understand that your senses are your enemies. It is far better to do your prescribed duty, even though it's full of fault, than to do someone else's duty, which is fraught with danger. This is ridiculous when you think that you should perform someone else's duty. You have the example of Arjun here, who finds his duty on the battlefield to be unpainful and to be unpleasant. And he decides that, hey, why don't I become a monk? Why don't I become a mendicant? Why don't I become and do anything else rather than fight this war? And Krishna is explaining to him, it is better to do your own duty perfectly than to do the duty of another. Even though your duty might appear imperfect, it is far better to do that than to do somebody else's duty perfectly. There is great danger in that. Well, to give you an extreme example, it is so much better to keep your own spouse happy than to keep your neighbor's spouse happy. How ridiculous it would be if you said, I don't want to keep my spouse happy, I'd rather keep my neighbor's spouse happy. You have to do your Svadharma. You do not have to do Paradharma, because the path of Paradharma is indeed full of danger. So Krishna explains to Arjun, again in chapter 18, verse 47. Shreyan Svadharma Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvan Napnoti Kilbishan. I want to take you from Bhagawad Geeta into the field of psychology. And many of you who might have studied in your psychology class or in your MBA class or BBA class, right? You would have understood that there is a Maslow's hierarchy. And in this Maslow's hierarchy, when your basic physiological needs are fulfilled, when your emotional needs are fulfilled, when your intellectual needs are fulfilled, when your self-esteem needs are fulfilled, then one begins to express the essence of one's being. And in the expression of the essence of one's being, one attains self-actualization. For those who are inclined to doing deeper reading and research, I will recommend to you Maslow's Business Reader. And if you read Maslow's Business Reader parallel to the Bhagavad Gita, you will understand that Maslow's description in his book, Maslow Business Reader, in his book, he describes the self-actualized person, the one who has gone beyond physiological needs, physical needs, beyond emotional needs, beyond intellectual needs, beyond self-esteem needs. When he works in a spirit of sacrifice, when he works in a spirit to express the essence of his being, he is indeed, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Sthita Prajna. And the qualities of that Sthita Prajna, as described in Maslow's Business Reader, are identical. But many centuries before Maslow, Lord Krishna emphasized that this is how he has created this universe. That each of us has an essence of our being, which when we perform in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God, we become self-actualized. We become free from the chains of our physical, emotional, intellectual, ego needs. And we attain moksha, we attain freedom, and we attain freedom from Prakriti, and we attain union with God. And if you have to do that, then please don't try to imitate somebody else's duty, somebody else's work, somebody else's profession. Because indeed, you will find fulfillment when you act according to the expression of that which is the essence of your being. So, according to your guna and your karma, last time I explained to you that there are many jatis and even more sub-jatis. But this varna is not a means to classify socially, but the varna is a means for you to realize what you should be doing in order to attain self-actualization. That if your inclination is to engage in the acquisition of wealth in trading, then it would be useless for you to engage your life in doing research and teaching. You will be frustrated, you will be unhappy, and you will only create more births for you to come, for more suffering. But whatever is your nature, do and act according to your nature. Nothing is higher, nothing is lower, but everything is different. So if you want to be truly free, act according to the essence of your being. Do not act according to what appears attractive in the world or what appears unattractive in the world. As I pointed out to you, Krishna clearly points out that be free from likes and dislikes, and do not let those likes and dislikes determine what kind of work or what kind of profession or what kind of duties you should perform. You should engage in those duties which are the essence of your being. So dharma is that which when you express leads to your extinction. You have two types of dharma: the dharma of your body, mind, intelligence, and you have the dharma of your soul. So you have the dharma of Prakriti and you have the dharma of your Purush, dharma of nature, material nature, and dharma of the spirit. The dharma of the individual soul or spirit is to serve God. The dharma of your Prakriti is to act in its fullest expression in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion. And if you act according to your inner nature, not according to somebody else's nature, and you engage in doing your own duty in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion, you can attain perfection and you can attain union with God. So the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful, shall I say, HR text. All human resource development people should understand this principle. That you should understand what is the essential nature of that individual. And according to the nature of that individual, he should be engaged in work. And that work you should do not for reward. Indeed, we are punished by rewards. But he should do that work which will actually be in a spirit of sacrifice. And that will teach him to attain extinction of the ego, the self. And by remembering God, attain union. So dharma is the way, Svadharma is your individual way, and Paradharma, dictated by your senses, dictated by what is pleasant, unpleasant, likable, dislikable, that is the enemy. So with this, I will pause here and I will answer any questions you might have.
Good morning, sir. I'll start with our first question. Sir, how is surrender to God different from performing our dharma? Or
Pardon?
are they the same thing?
What?
How is surrender to God different from performing our dharma? Or are
See,
they the
I
same?
have explained this before. Again, I'm going to tell you the same thing, that there is active surrender and passive surrender. Passive surrender means to give up everything and lie down on the ground and say, I surrender. Active surrender means you surrender to the voice of God who is in your heart. And by surrendering to the voice of God who is in your heart, you engage in performing your dharma in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God. Ishvara sarva bhutana videdeshe arjuna tistati brahmyan sarva bhutani yantrarudani maya. God says, I am seated in your heart, I am directing you onward towards your destiny. You are merely seated in a machine made of material energy. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapshishi. So surrender unto him who is in your heart, who is guiding you onward towards your destiny. And by surrendering unto him, which means doing what he says, you will attain peace, perfection, and supreme destination.
Sure, sir. So, sir, why do we compare ourselves while performing our duties? I mean, as we perform, and if we get some kind of inconvenience or so, then we start comparing our life with that of others.
Because we have forgotten God. The idea is to remember God and forget self. But if you don't do that, you will look at the world, you will keep comparing yourself, you will keep considering that you're separate and distinct and different from other people. And then without understanding anything about the philosophy of life, which is contained in the Bhagawad Geeta, you'll say, why him, why her, why not me? And the answer is because their destiny is different from yours. So look to God, not to people around you, and do what God has destined for you.
Absolutely, sir, because our life is going on according to our karmic account, and others' life is going on according to their karma. Can we say that?
Yeah, people like to say it in terms of karma, but I like to say it in terms of what God has intended as your destiny.
Sure, sir. So, sir, how can we maintain a dharmic life in today's world of distraction, where we find distraction even on a one click?
Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yat juhosi, dadasi, yat tapasyasi, kaunteya tad purusham adarpanam. Mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mami vishasi yukteva matmanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever charities, whatever austerities you perform, do it for Krishna. Always think of Krishna, become his devotee, offer homage unto him. And at the conclusion of your life, you will go to him without fail.
Absolutely, sir. So, sir, these were our questions for today, and thank you so much for today's session. Sir, we will see you next time.
Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, sir. Thank you so much.